Thank you so much for the nice introduction. I'm so excited to be back in Orange County. All good roads lead to Orange County. And I have a lot of support here. I was endorsed by the Orange County Register, and I did a very good job during the primary with this particular county. In fact, I came out of the primary a few months ago as the second highest Republican vote getter in the entire state of California. I'm very proud of that. 1.5 million votes, and that's a testament really to the support that we have across the state. Among the Republicans, I took 54 of 58 counties as the top Republican for treasurer position. So very excited about it, and I want to share with you a little bit about the issues that are very important for this race and why it's so important that we have an independent check and balance on a legislature run amok. And on topics related to finance and economics, let me tell you, the issues are very, very serious. So I want to walk through some of those issues, and then I want to share a dose of optimism about why we are in a good position in 2022 to make significant inroads, particularly in those communities that historically have not been part of the Republican Party. And we've got great polling information that has come out, and it gives me a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of hope for this state and for our country. But before I do all of that, I want to share just a little bit about my background so you get a chance to know who I am. I'm a city council member and a mayor in a small city in deep blue Los Angeles County. My town, city of Cudahy, is 98% Hispanic, mostly Spanish-speaking, and 90% Democrat. Think about that shift, or think about that demographic predicament. And against that backdrop, I have consistently been reelected in my city as a Republican elected official, because the issues I speak to are issues that resonate with ordinary people. Imagine these conservative values: balancing the budget, reeling in a code enforcement department, respecting private property rights, lowering taxes and fees, particularly in a working class community. These are the things that I've championed. Ending corruption. Think about that. In fact, that's an important issue because in my region, we've been plagued with episodes of corruption throughout all of the neighboring cities. You may have heard of my neighboring city of Bell. You remember that case, right? This was the town 10 years ago that featured a city manager paying himself $1.5 million a year in a town where the average income is $30,000. Think about that disgusting violation of the public trust. I remember living in New York City at the time. I'm from Cudahy. I was born and raised. But after I went to school and began working abroad and in the East Coast, I monitored the political landscape in my region, my home region, and I was dismayed by what I was hearing and observing about the city of Bell from all the way in the East Coast. A couple of years later, I decided to come back to Southern California and pass through the family home in the city of Cudahy. And within 2 months of relocation, my own city had an episode of corruption. And it was not too dissimilar from the case of Bell. The dollar signs were a little bit smaller, but the conduct no less egregious. And against that situation, I decided at the time that I was going to support a good candidate for city council before I moved on with my private sector life. And when I looked and looked, I could not find anybody stepping forward that was halfway decent to remediate the internal control deficiencies of my city. And so I had to look myself in the mirror and determine whether it was the right moment for me to step forward and serve my constituents. And let me tell you, that was a very difficult decision. I mean, my fellow candidates know that getting involved in politics, becoming a candidate, serving, all of these come with incredible self-sacrifice. I'm telling you that from experience, especially those of us that come from private sector careers. You forego a lot of that development because you're dedicated to service to others. And in my city's case, it was a very difficult decision. I had to pray about it and think about it and contemplate and discuss with my constituents. But after some time, I determined that my skill set was appropriate for my city's situation, and I decided to run for city council in 2013. I was elected overwhelmingly with support of the people. I was appointed mayor immediately by my fellow council members. And let me tell you, we started reform right out of the gate. It was like playing SimCity in real life. We fired the finance director, the city manager, the community services director, and we rebuilt a city from scratch. We really did. I'm very proud of that. One of the first things I did was contact the California State Controller in Sacramento. I went up there, knocked on the door, literally and figuratively, demanding a forensic examination of my city's accounts. And that was very important because I was about to unleash the greatest government reform measures in my city's history, and I needed independent corroboration to justify some of these actions because they were not going to be welcomed by all of the stakeholders. We needed to make some very difficult decisions. And when the controller refused to come to my city or ignored my request, I went to the LA Times and I delivered a 10-page summary of findings about my city's predicament. The Los Angeles Times newspaper published an article, a very favorable article about a conservative Republican elected official in Los Angeles County. And after publishing that article, the controller then came to my city and delivered that authoritative forensic examination that I was demanding. And I'm very proud of that as well. And early on, I like to share this story. I took on the public schools, and many of you know just how decrepit a lot of the public education system in California is, particularly in working class communities. I was just reading a poll a couple of weeks ago about the achievement gap being wider than ever in this state between those that have the resources and those that do not. We've lost like 2 years of education in the poorest communities because of the COVID lockdowns. That's the truth, and it's very sad. Indeed, it is a civil rights injustice. And in my own city, when we observed a decrepit failure factory public school cheating the kids, 80% of the kids in this particular case could not read or write or perform basic arithmetic at grade level, and those standards are already low to begin with, I decided to take on the public schools. The political class in the area told me to stay away from the public schools. They told me, Jack, you are not a school board member. Hands off is what they said to me. But even though it wasn't within my formal jurisdiction, it was certainly within my moral obligation to get involved. And so I decided to take the schools on. I held public hearings. In my city council chamber as mayor, as presiding officer, and I indicted the local schools. I had people testify at the microphone, parents, teachers, students, and I indicted the local schools. I really did. And let me tell you, when I pushed that envelope, there were real results very quickly. I was summoned to downtown Los Angeles by Los Angeles Unified School District representatives, and within a few days after that meeting, the principal of that troubled elementary school was removed, and the rest of that administration followed course in short order. I'm very proud of that, and let that be a testament that when you push the envelope just a little bit, you can get some amazing things done. You can move mountains. Have faith in that kind of activism. And let me tell you, since then, I have championed conservative principles in my city at every opportunity, lowering taxes and fees for my working class residents, championing education reform, reeling in a code enforcement department that was out of control, and fighting every lingering remnant of corruption at every single opportunity. And that's been the commitment that I've displayed in my own city. And I want to bring that same commitment to Sacramento because the legislature is out of control, particularly in areas of finance and economics, which is the scope of the treasurer's position that I want to pursue. I bring to the table a combination of both public sector and private sector experience. I talked a little bit about my experience as a mayor and a city council member, but I'm also a certified public accountant, and I've worked for 20 plus years in corporate organizations at the highest levels of finance and treasury functions. And I'm very proud of that experience, and I want to bring it to the table so that I can serve honorably. I always talk about the criteria that you as voters should think about when you elect public officials. And I think there are 3 important criteria. Number 1, is the person ethical? Is the person doing what's right and not what is self-beneficial? We always have to put the people ahead of ourselves. And that is an ethical disposition that is a very important criterion. Another one is competence. Is the person knowledgeable about the issues at hand and about executing the role in a responsible way? It's one thing to be ethical, but if you don't have the right experience or the right knowledge to execute responsibly, you're disadvantaged in a lot of ways. Of course, the worst combination is being both unethical and educated, because then you can do some really nasty things in a very effective way. So we want to elect people that are responsible, ethical, competent, and of course conservative in their disposition, so that we know that they're acting in the best interests of the people. And that's the discipline I want to bring to Sacramento. The issues are very serious, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just share a few. Our debt in the state of California is out of control. Our credit rating is near the bottom. Only 6 states have a worse credit rating than California, including the state of Illinois, which, if you've read the newspapers, is just about to fall apart because of the same trajectory of mismanagement that is afflicting the state of California. We also have an unfunded pension liability, ladies and gentlemen, that stands at a staggering $1 trillion. That's according to Stanford University economists who look at the numbers and use a responsible discount rate to compute the valuation of that unfunded liability. And for reference, the size of the general fund in the state of California annually hovers around $200 billion. The source of all funds on an annual budgetary basis is about $300 billion. That means, if you do the math, that we would have to shut down government tomorrow and continue to tax you several times over for several years just to recover from this gap. Now, I didn't create this problem. I am inheriting this problem that our corrupt politicians are ignoring time after time. They kick the can down the road because they only care about the next 2 years or the next 4 years until they get reelected. That's a really fundamental problem with our elected officials, is that they don't think carefully about the long-term consequences of their decisions. We have to think about the long-term implications of the decisions that we take on. I've always taken on that outlook when I've made decisions as an elected official. And let me tell you, the decision to remediate this problem that we have, this impending tsunami, is not going to come with easy choices, but it begins with telling the truth. We have to tell the truth. And right now, fuzzy math politicians in Sacramento are using unrealistically achievable discount rates that present a very rosy picture about our long-term unfunded obligations. Look, I don't want to take anybody's pensions away. I don't relish that idea at all. And in fact, technically speaking, I don't have the authority to change local agency pension programs. But I do have the ability to influence the valuation and the discount rate that we use to communicate to the public just how severe this unfunded pension liability is. And my personal recommendation is that we recalibrate so that we are honest with the people, that we encourage and demand local agencies participating in the largest pension programs to shore up the funds with more significant contributions. That is important because we don't want the system to collapse. We want to shore it up as much as we can. But on the other hand, we also need to remediate the program, especially for those new entrants into the public sector. We need to begin to migrate from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan for those that are newly entering the public sector. Mathematically speaking, there is no other way to salvage the program. That is the truth. And I'm telling you with some authority, I used to be a pension auditor with one of the large public accounting firms. I used to teach statistics at the university. I know finance. I know about discount rates. I know how to compute valuation. I was a valuation expert in finance. So I know what I'm talking about when I tell you, mathematically speaking, the system will collapse if we do absolutely nothing and perpetuate the status quo. That is significantly irresponsible of fuzzy math politicians that want to ignore this problem. I am willing to move forward with remediation, and I am perhaps one of the only elected officials that even talks about it. Even some Republicans, dare I say, I'm ashamed to admit, are afraid to touch this issue. They're absolutely scared of the public sector union bosses. You know, I don't work for the public sector union bosses. I care about the workers. I care about the public sector workers, and I want their retirement to be preserved. I don't want the public sector worker to end up in bankruptcy court fighting for pennies on the dollar because corrupt politicians have lied to them. We need to tell the truth, ladies and gentlemen. So these are just some of the examples of the inappropriate conduct of the legislature, and I think that having an independent watchdog serving as a check and balance will be critically important. One of the things I intend to do when I get to Sacramento is testify regularly at the Assembly and State Senate committee hearings, to the point where the Assembly members and the state senators are going to be sick and tired of seeing my face. And that is my commitment to you, and I'm going to stand for the taxpayer. That is my obligation to you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share just a few other statistics about why we should have hope for the state of California. Wall Street Journal reported not too long ago that among Hispanic Americans nationwide, 37% of them are positioned to vote Republican in the congressional midterms. For people like Chris, you know, this will happen. 37% will vote for Republicans as compared to 37% for Democrats. The first time ever Wall Street Journal is reporting a balanced demographic. This is exciting news. Just last week, I read another poll that put that mix at 43 and 45%. For all intents and purposes, we are competitive with Hispanic Americans going into November. African Americans, you know, we started President Biden's term with an African American support for the president at 75%. This is the highest demographic approval of any group. Now it stands at 50%. It's been cut almost in half. Think about that opportunity. Yes. Asian Americans, only a third believe that Biden should be president of the United States. Working class people are sick of corrupt education. They're sick of the inflation, of economic deterioration. These are all positions that value the Republican perspective. And I think that we are positioned going into November to do very well with these particular demographics. And I know that I stand in a very unique position going into November with particularly the Hispanic community. I happen to be the first Hispanic candidate for state treasurer since 1870. 150 years. I am the first Hispanic candidate in modern history. Now, I'm not into identity politics, but I'm mentioning this because I know I am in a unique position to penetrate and make significant inroads in a community that I know very well, because I was born into this community and I serve a town that is 98% Hispanic. I know all of my neighbors, and let me tell you, 90% of them are Democrat, but not a single one of them, not one, ever signed on to this woke agenda that includes teaching transgenderism to 5-year-olds. Not one of them. So we've got an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to make significant inroads. And I want to tell you, there is a revolution coming in this state and in this country, and I don't want you to get it started without me. I'm Jack Guerrero. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.